What's up, brother? How are you?
Good. Monday's over. Well, at least for the work week, but Mondays are the normative days that I normally drag. It's the beginning of the week, so but no, good day so far. It's hot as hell over here in Arizona.
Yeah, yeah. That's why my posts to Marchese Max always wind up on Mondays. I forgot to post it today, but I'll be sure to post more Marchese Maxing posts on Mondays to help with everybody's Monday. What's up, Dracul the Third? Good to have you here. We've been interacting a lot. I forgot how we met or interacted on the timeline, but it's good to see you. I'm still getting a little set up here. I suppose I could start by saying what prompted me to bring this up is, we talked a little bit about it last time in the corn debate, but there seems to be like a major dividing line between, I guess you could say, characterize it as firstly like actual trad, or I should say like alt-right or something along those lines, and the red pill-esque PUA genre of rightism or edgelording. And then of course there is the fake tradcons who like say, oh yeah, marriage and everything, but they somehow still think it's like acceptable to post porn basically because you should heckin' not heckin' care, and they're just kind of like LARPing. So I wanted to draw up this dividing line or draw up this space because like I don't even know if this like can really hold up to debate. And you guys might have seen on the timeline last night, these two like boneheads were arguing with me over it. And one guy tries to go, the state's going to take your stuff, so there's no heckin' point in getting married because if she divorces you, she gets all your stuff, and there's nothing you can heckin' do about it. And it's like, okay, so this begs the question of what prompts her to set up the divorce. We're all red pilled, we all get it, marriage, she can take your stuff, and sometimes, like a lot of guys, do get just like fucked. But this idea, because a lot of these guys are normies. These are like proverbial normies. They LARP online like they're not. But this idea, like half the time when they say that, I'm like, you don't have enough stuff for her to worry about taking in the first place, you fucking faggot. Like you're a fucking mediocre retard. You don't got to worry about her taking your millions of dollars because you don't fucking have millions of dollars, faggot. So that's first of all. Second of all, oh, she's going to take my stuff. Okay, so under what circumstance, removing the outliers of women that are just crazy and, have these like BPD tier just like behaviors, removing those from the equation, when we look at just this distribution of people, their behavior and normies and normie women, under what circumstance are they actually prompted to initiate that divorce? And yeah, divorce rates skyrocketed because of no fault divorce and everything. And, you have to lend credibility to this point they make or women or just feminists in particular, this point they make of this like boys club sycophantile style power structure wherein, if she tries to initiate divorce, she used to have a reason because, you know, otherwise, like the man's word is taken for it. And then this sycophantile thing of like all the men are going to stick up for that man and that sort of thing. So, but otherwise, when they initiate these no fault divorces, like what are some of these circumstances? And at some level, you have to admit that for like the normie man is a fucking schlub, is a fucking bonehead, is a fucking retard. And these guys were arguing with me as if there's, women just like have BPD, all of them, and eternally just, are heckin' big fat meanies who want to heckin', leave men just for the money. But, you retards don't even have any money to begin with. So I guess I'll start there with this, argument I had with these guys. You guys could jump in with some of your thoughts while I walk around in my house doing the meme of talking while walking. So I guess I could also say I argued with one of these PUA guys, and they do this meme of, well, it's heckin' better to heckin' be promiscuous and all of that. And my question is always, I said this last time, what does sex 7 times with, or excuse me, sex with 7 women 1 time do for you that sex with 1 woman seven times doesn't do for you? And they can never really come up with a substantial argument. Well, biology. Okay, your biological imperative is to reproduce successfully. There is a slight drive in there to play the strategy of throw enough shit against the fan such that something will stick. But there's a secondary layer to reproductive success, and that is the actual survival of the children. So there's two biologies to this. So this doesn't really imply multiple women doesn't really imply that you will have more reproductive success. The creation of life doesn't mean the sustainment and facilitation of a life. This might have worked way back in the day of hunter-gatherers and all of that, but we also evolved a deeply sophisticated mammalian pair bonding system wherein we also, and this goes for all of our social constructs, our socializations, friendships, and all of that, these emotional needs evolved as a way to facilitate further survivalism goals. You could think about making friends and all of that. What that does is that makes cooperation much more effective. And when you cooperate, you can do division of labor and all of that. And that's basically why humans are one of the most successful species on Earth. It follows that what developed with alongside that is pair bonding, wherein you have a relationship that holds you together. And when you are together, you are invested in both each other and the child, making more likely that they will survive. In other words, you could kind of say this is a balance between quality and quantity. So you go ahead, Wartorn.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think the problem is like they use the multiple partners thing as a ego boost, because
Yeah.
if they only have one person, they're like, oh, I love her and shit. But if they have multiple ones, they're like a lot of women when they play that game where they're like, oh, I still have it, I'm really sexy. I can
Yeah.
get anybody I want. So they have that what is that harem mentality in their mind.
Yeah, that's the only difference. And this is why I reduced them down to that question, because the only difference is externalizing your self-esteem to this like idea of empirical evidence for why you're valuable or why you are sexy. And we all need to feel sexy, and people who don't feel sexy or don't feel valuable, and it really has more so to do with how they view themselves and what behaviors they do, that, whether or not they're aligned with their ideal self. That's really what gives you low self-esteem, is not doing things aligned with your ideal self. But they take the easy way out of getting externalized self-esteem such that they don't have to put in that effort for uh, living by their ideal self, because that takes all this kind of effort. So they play this game of, well, if I get externalized approval for, how sexy I am and how valuable I am, look, all these, in the woman case, look, all these men want to commit to me. And that's like the I shouldn't use that word. That's the wrong word. The ultimate male approval, and then the ultimate female approval is, granting him access to sex. So they do this to yield that self-esteem, but it's fake confidence because it's dependent upon something else. What happens when you don't get approval for a week or 2 weeks? What happens when more girls start to reject you for whatever reason? And so I'll wrap up by saying, when I reduce them to that, they can't admit that though, because that's scary and frightening to admit that they have that emotional vulnerability. So we'll have Red Pill Barbie go ahead, and then War Torn.
Um, so I spent a lot of time looking into red pill. I think it can serve a purpose. I think the problem is that it's supposed to work in collaboration with a game plan. A lot of guys refer to spinning plates, and I think it does get to the point where it becomes an ego boost rather than a game plan. I think the game plan is supposed to be ideally that you're getting yourself to the point where you feel financially stable, where you feel ready to commit, and you're sort of spinning your plates in the idea of finding who the best partner for you can be. The issue is that a lot of guys will just keep spinning those plates until there's no plates left. And I think that pair bonding for guys can be problematic too. No, I don't think that men are the same as women. I think that obviously pair bonding for women is much more important.
Mhm.
Promiscuity is much more damaging to women, but I think that it can be damaging to men in some ways. And the reason is because I think that when you surround yourself with a particular type of woman who's only interested in hookup culture, for example,
Yeah.
you're going to start getting a very low opinion of women. And then when it comes to the point where you're like, okay, I feel financially ready, I'm ready to maybe make a commitment, to have children, you go, fuck that, these women are terrible. All they want to do is sleep around, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. So the bitterness starts to come in, it's like the black pill starts to come in. I think that it only works if a guy is doing it as part of like a long-term mating strategy.
Right.
And I don't think guys necessarily, a lot of guys that pick up on the red pill concept of plate spinning aren't necessarily thinking long term. They're thinking like they get addicted to the attention. That's just being super critical of it. But I've noticed that it's happening to guys a lot. I can't speak of the male experience because I'm not a man, but it's just an observation that I've made. And I think that if I was a man, I would probably have that observation. I would probably have potentially that opinion too, quite low opinion of women. It would make it very hard for me at that point when I was ready maybe to make more of a commitment to be able to say, is anyone worth committing to? Because I think that they begin to degrade themselves. I know that sounds bad,
Hmm.
but I think sometimes when you're plate spinning, you're supposed to be like spinning quality plates.
Right.
And eventually they're spinning any old plate and they're hooking up with this girl, that girl. I can think long term, you've built yourself up, you've got financially stable, and then you're thinking, my God, why would I want to settle down? Women are awful.
Yeah, I'll say real quick that, I had to tell a lot of guys when I was starting to date my wife, and I had some friends, we were in the military, and they're like, dude, how do you do that? What? Blah, blah, blah. When I go on Tinder, it's all freaking whores and all that. And to your point, they're only paying, and this is what actual porn brain is. Actual porn brain is you are only attracted to, like, you don't even notice women if they don't have their tits and ass out because you're eternally associating how much you get off or you're eternally like associating your visual cues from porn with your sexuality and thus are playing this game of, oh well, I'm swiping and all that, but I only like girls with their tits and they'll say, oh well, I'm not settling for less, I'm not settling for girls that are average or something, I'm I'm getting the hot girl, but you only think she's hot because it's frying your brain to see tits and ass. And then to your point, it follows that what do you think a girl who sticks her tits and ass out is going to behave like? There's just a basic association. And then to your point, they get blackpilled, but it's like crazy concept. But once you like, and this isn't about porn per se, but if you just remove this game of, oh, I only date the hot girls, and this game of I need some sort of immediate like sexual turn on stimulation, you'll actually get in touch with like true male sex drive, which is like basically like just would or wouldn't. And you know that instantly upon seeing a girl, whether she has her tits out or not, and you just follow that up with would is the basic level need for you to initiate any sort of conversation. And then the high standards meme is actually having high standards for the things that aren't very basic, the things that separate women from one woman from another, which is how she behaves, how she's treated, or how she treats you, and so forth. So I know that's a lot. You guys have been waiting for a moment. So we'll have War Torn, and then we'll have a leader of the resistance. Go ahead. So War Torn, you go ahead.
I feel as though it's a problem with the normie mindset. Like the normie mind is predisposed to fake ego boost because they do always have that harem necessity, Because I've seen that after 30, when like their looks start to go down, they start to crash out. Like no lies and shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Leader of the resistance, you go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that after the age of reproduction is over, promiscuity really doesn't matter anymore. You can be as promiscuous as you want. It's only your relationships are only as meaningful as you make them. It doesn't really affect anyone else other than you and the person you're in the relationship with. But if we're talking, but if we're talking about the limited time that we have to reproduce on this earth, and well, for ladies, it's around the age of 40. Then we have to have laws that realize that reality. We have to have some sort of standards that address that reality as far as the continuation of the species is concerned. Unless we don't care about the continuation of the species and the whole structure of family and whatnot, which I'm perfectly okay with tossing out at this point. I don't really care myself one way or another. But yeah, after the age of reproduction's over, marriage versus promiscuity, it really doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, because everybody is well unattractive once you get to that certain age. Anyways, everybody 50 years old, nobody's really attracted to anybody when you're 50, 60 years old. That's just a fact of life.
Based Harper, you go ahead. I saw you on mute for a sec. Oh, but he's now a listener. Let me see if I can, or Harpreet, I should say.
I guess we're still to listen.
Yeah. I added him as a speaker again. He might have to drop out and then drop back in or something. Yeah. Well, I'll say in the interim, and that's where you get into the distinction with the rightoids that are like far right, me and some other guys I know here are subscribed to, if not Christian, at the very least understand the Christian ethos, which is, I use Christianity, but even just absent Christianity, past that age, that still doesn't address the question of what does promiscuity give you that marriage does not, and or monogamy does not, at the very least. And to Wartorn's point, it is just like ego differential. Everything that people say, oh well, uh sexual experience, and it's like, okay, you can experience, or sex drive, we'll say sex drive, okay, so a sex drive means you want to have sex, a lot or a little, so the only thing that a sex drive would mean is you just need to have sex in quantity, so you can just have sex in quantity with the same woman or same man in women's case, and that would be satiated. There's other stuff like, well, sexual experience. Well, actually, I'll leave it at that one. Give you a chance to say something to that. So go ahead, leader.
Well, yeah, I wanted to say that as far as sex is concerned, well, you're mathematically correct that there's no difference in having too many of multiple partners sex versus too much sex with one person. It's I'm going to the extremes where you made your example.
Yeah.
I'm going to the
Yep.
extremes, and that's why the truth is God gives us this warning ahead of time that you shouldn't be seeking that path at all, because it just leads to the dead end
Based.
of meaninglessness. Yeah.
Based. Based. Well said. Yeah. Wartorn, you go ahead.
Um, let's step back 1 second and then look at the problem with promiscuity on a scientific level for a second, because we already know the problem that it is when we talk about God. But a lot of we think about like having multiple partners that would increase the ability to reproduce and have different types of genes, but at the same time, it also increases the chance of getting STDs and causing problems with your offspring. So honestly, having one partner is the best option because it has the least likely percentages of something going incorrectly. Because, you pick the best partner that you are able to get. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in that a man who has multiple children with a harem of women, it would follow that his fatherliness is distributed across them unevenly or even evenly. And we just know, to your point, we already know what the consequences of that are. We sort of foresaw this coming, and then we actually have now, okay, we gave it a shot as society, and look what turned out. When we talk about the multifaceted female or male approval, a lot of guys, I think you were talking to me about this earlier, this idea that, well, that's what makes you a man. Oh, the least masculine thing you could do is subordinate your sense of value to the arbitration of women. If you don't think you have value, or if you think no man has value unless women assign it to him, you are granting women authority. That's not very based alpha. That's not very I'm a tough guy who gives the directions of you to say. And so this meme of that, that completely obliterates the ego idea, that completely obliterates the masculinity idea. And I think there's just a foundational principle of, and I'll try not to, I'll make it absent to Christianity. There's just a foundational principle of people when they get into relationships, sexual relationships. It is intimate, and I don't care what anybody fucking says. Like, you will care. You'll care about that person, you'll care about your relationship, and it follows that if you are splitting up amongst one another, it just is a betrayal. You could say there's a depth of mammal pair bonding to it. You could say there's a value to it, whatever you want to call it, but ultimately it never ends well in terms of treatment of somebody. And I'm not one of these like meme libtards who goes, oh, well, the ultimate telos of ethics is don't hurt anybody. But I think that is a part of our ethos. And if you're betraying somebody for the sake of getting off, getting your coom, getting your self-esteem, what does that do to the other person's self-esteem? And there's no way to rationalize that in terms of like, well, this is better in the end. A lot of these guys who play this game too of like, well, it teaches you about women, or well, it keeps you like up level, it keeps you high status as a man. That's all code for safety. That's all code for I'm presuming she is going to leave me in the first place. And if you presume that your woman will leave you on the drop of a hat, that's precisely what it means to have a self-esteem issue. You think she thinks of you what you think of you. And if you think you are not worth that commitment, now granted, we do have to acknowledge that women can be fickle. Women can have, a greater propensity for impulse than men can. And so it would follow to be a little bit more protective of your sense of self, your emotions, your masculinity, than to just like, be this open with women. But just like how, and I use this example a lot, and I'll finish up real quick. I use this example a lot. Just like how when we look at women's podcasts or something like Call Her Daddy or whatever, right? What are they saying? They say all men are like Coomers, basically. All men are cheating Coomers, and they're just endlessly led by the nose, or rather led by the tip of their fucking penis and all of that. And we all know, men here, much of us here are above that. Much of us are transcendental to that base level impulse and, baby little lizard brain need. And so it would follow that if there's at least some portion of men who aren't eternal coomers led by the tip of their penis, it would follow that like the masculinity podcasts and all that on some level are just call her daddy, just flip every instance of the word men with women. And you have basically the same sort of air of not bitterness, because I don't want to be gay and say, oh, they're all bitter and all that, but the same air of not having any semblance of there are women that exist in this world who have just like a transcendental human brain and identity that gives them a sense of it's right and it's valuable to stay within my committed relationship, even if there's like an enticing feeling, or even if there's the girls' night or something like that. So I'll leave that there. War Torn, you go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to go on a tangent so you could talk about the tweet that I shared with you with Tristan Tate.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, like, that he was making fun of incels, and the fact is he has the same markers of incels that he's making fun of. He's like, where you were saying before that his value comes from the value that women place on him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was, and I preach that a lot because, and I'll make this one quick. I preach that a lot because if you subscribe to that, every instance of every rejection from women feels like an absolute devastation. And a lot of the PUA stuff, although you want to have extreme accountability and all of that, you want to be a man, you want to say, if I'm not getting girls, what's the answer here, right? I have to self-improve and all of that. But this stuff really, especially with like the making fun of people with it, it neglects that there's other factors that go into this. And a great example I'll use is when I was in college, one of my like years, whatever, I still had like an iPhone 5 or something, right? I was still rocking with it. And this was by the time like the iPhone 10, 11 came out, I think. And so, for my birthday, I drove down home and my mom wanted to do something nice. So she wanted to upgrade my phone to like an iPhone 7. They had a deal, even though the 10 or 11 was the latest one out. I guess they had a deal going. So I upgraded to an iPhone 7. I had a friend from one of my classes. Her and I got along. We did a lot of like math class homework together. And so she saw that I pulled out the new phone. She was like, "Oh, it's funny in the story. She says my last name. I almost just said it. Oh, Marchese, like you got a new phone, huh? Let's go." And I said to her, I was like, "Is that really something to women?" And she was like, well, yeah, actually, like it'll make a difference. And now you could argue this like status stuff, this status meme and all of that, but there are women who will seriously see that you don't have a specific iPhone and go, "Oh, he's not good enough for me." And it's like if you sit there and think that you must not be man enough because of that, like you have subordinated yourself way too far to the arbitration of women. Like that's actually a retarded thing to think. Women who do act like that have a problem of self-esteem in their own, and they play the game of either reject them before they reject me, or forever rejecting increasingly attractive men such that they can upgrade their status. If I reject a hot guy, because he has an iPhone, whatever, that must mean that I'm really hot. So we'll let Barbie go ahead, and then War Torn, you could go on your longer form.
I was just going to say, I can see why men are starting to get that feeling of having to use sexual gratification for an ego boost, if you will. I think prior to feminism, which I think had, some good points and a lot of bad points mostly, is that men had a very specific role, and a very specific use to society, and women were completely and almost absolutely reliant on them. I think we still are very reliant on men. Absolutely. The problem is perception, is that women are no longer under the perception that we're still as reliant on men as ever. And now men are left with that situation where they're still having to pick up the lion's share of the work, but they're not actually getting the gratification that they got before. They're not being given the reward that they were given before. Men prior to feminism were able to choose the best wife suitable for what they were able to provide. They were able to be rewarded with family and somebody to support them and look after them. And that's just not happening anymore. So I can sort of see in some ways why men have become to the point now where they're looking for other ways to find some sort of gratification or some sort of level of attention. I know that's a bit of a feminine take, but I do empathize with them in that sense. Like I can see where they're trying to fill a space, and I think where a lot of people aren't really spiritual anymore as well, and they don't have any God in their lives or any sort of spiritual belief system, there is a lack of sort of harmony and sort of meaning in life. So it's like, well, I'm going to need to find a way to make myself feel better about myself, and sexual gratification and sexual attention is a way of filling a void. That's just something that I feel might be happening to a lot of men.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the classical addictive behavior of I don't feel good, so I will do something to ameliorate that, but it's sort of like taking a drug to, treat a symptom, not a cause. If you have low self-esteem and to feel better about yourself, you go have sex or something, you still will just eternally pathologize. So yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a worthwhile thing to point out. War Torn, you go ahead.
Honestly, when I think about it a little bit more closely, it's literally the same problem with the left and the right. It's just weak, subservient men on both sides. They just have different markers for them. The fake masculine is on the right, and on the left is the male feminist, that they base their whole entire existence on the female, like the need for female validation.
Yeah, and you bring up something too, a lot of like we saw the Tommy Lahren meme, especially with Andrew Wilson. And the meme was she kept huffing and puffing. And then he's like, okay, well, what do men get out of this deal? And she's like, well, if you were a real man, you would want to get something out of it anyway. And like, that's a retarded Coomer cope. That's just a cope for, I want everything for nothing. I want to have my cake and eat it too. But they make this point, and women have always kind of done this, of they want this genuineness. They want a genuine affection that's absent any sort of expectation of transaction. And that's a rightful thing to want, but it would follow that you have to give that back. And even though that's still a tacit transaction, you just certainly can't expect people to have a genuine affection for you absent transaction, but you still treat them like shit. Like there has to be a base level transaction there. It doesn't need to be counting, who does what under what circumstance and all of that. And I'll say there's a layer to this too, where, to your point, a lot of these guys, they eternally relate to women strictly through that lens. And I would say you could think about how you've made friends before, right? There's a significant number of people who have trouble making friends, but for those of us who haven't had trouble making friends, but still have trouble relating to it, not saying that anybody here does, but if you are struggling to relate to the opposite sex, what's interesting is it is a relationship. So investigate how you relate to the same sex, and that would be friends and all of that. And what you find is the people you become friends with, you're not fucking counting who does what under what circumstance. You're not devastated when they say, hey, can't hang out and all of that. There's this sort of uh, unspoken dance back and forth of, okay, so this person says you can't do this, you can't do that. Okay, you're sort of waiting for there to be a pattern to emerge. And when a negative pattern emerges, that's when you become a little bit strained by the relationship. So all that's to say that when you make friends, you're also not neurotically thinking about what to say under what circumstance. Some people are, and they struggle with that, and I help a lot of them. But a good number of people I find don't struggle to make friends. They just sort of hang out back and forth, and it's very clear you could feel yourself not expecting something from them, and you could feel like they're not expecting something from you. And it just follows that that is absent in how men and women relate so often. For whatever Coomer, low self-esteem reason, people eternally relate to the opposite sex strictly through the lens of an expectation instead of taking value and pride in just relating back and forth without having some sort of pressure or anything and trying to think about what to say to make them like you and all that. Just like how you just meme out with your friends. You don't even know what you're saying. You're not thinking about what you're saying and what you're doing. You're not thinking about whether it was at this person's place or that person's place. You just do it. And then if there's a pattern emerges, it becomes a little bit of a problem. It follows to treat how you relate to women and for how women to relate to men in a similar way. Wartorn, you go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to interject really fast. We all know the subservient men on the left, obviously, but on the right, it's the happy life, happy wife thing, and
Yeah.
it's really prevalent on the right. It's just a different flavor of ice cream, as they say, but it's entirely the same species.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier today we talked about like happy wife, happy life, and that premise was just so bothersome to me because to your point, it tacitly suggests that the orbit of your life is around women, and not even just women, but just about how they feel. And it's like, dude, you're just living a life of allowing a baby to just cry and then just cater to that. Happy wife, happy life. I always resented that when I remember one of my teachers said that when I was in the high school. I always resented that because I was like, first of all, how about you just like happy life, meaning that if you want your life to be happy, make it happy. And they would say it with this air of like, oh, this like thing, like it's so scary when women get upset. Kind of crazy concept, but people can just have their feelings and just be mad or be upset or whatever. And then you could just not be scared of it because you're not going to fucking die. Nothing's going to happen. And yeah, on some level, you don't want your spouse to be upset all the time. You don't want them to be unhappy. But this idea that any little whim of your wife has to be catered to is just as subordinate as like leftard feminists, and even going as far as the based alpha Chad masculinity types. game and all of that. Why is game and pickup so uncomfortable on some level? Because the minute you approach a woman, and this isn't to say don't ever approach a woman, but the minute you approach a woman, you are saying, hey, you're telling them, hey, I'm going to do a dance in front of you, and I want you to like it, and I'm going to keep dancing in front of you. That is by nature like subordinate. That is by its nature a layer of asking for something, and like that's precisely what it means to be subordinate and emasculine, is to ask for something. That doesn't mean don't ever ask for anything, right? I always try to tailor what I say with, don't devolve into like self-flagellation. But all that's to say, to your point, like very even the and that's why I said in the beginning there's like three categories of people with this. There's like the actual far right oids who, and even some of them are still just like coping and seething, but the far right position of women are not to be danced around. You can't take women fully seriously. There's the pickup layer, the cool guy, red pill layer of, well, do your dance in front of women because, that's what it means to be a tough guy, is to get laid and to do your little fucking dance in front of women. And then feminists are, yeah, we're going to do our dance in front of women. Our dance is just, mimic them for approval, because that's a part of relating, is to be similar. So you go ahead, Wartorn.
I do find it funny because women don't like subservient men, and we see that because a lot of the times when the men say, "Oh, happy life, happy wife," or whatever, the women cheat on them, and they go after
Yeah.
like men that aren't subservient. So it might work in the short run, this thing that they do, but in the long run, and it absolutely destroys them.
It's relating to them not as a man. It's relating to them as someone beneath them, as almost like a child. And the reason women don't like that isn't just like, oh, because you're a man, you should tell that bitch what the fuck to do, and you should tell that bitch to shut the hell up and all of that. The reason why women don't really want that per se, they just want the grounded direction from you. And this doesn't mean boss her around or anything, but it just means you walk the path forward and take her with you, because she, as even the most mature women, live in the external, live in the emotional. And that's not to say in a condescending way, but it's just to say that life and the world is harder for them to navigate when they're not quite always as rational, and when their feelings get the best of them. They need your presence of groundedness. They can't always rationalize their feelings through and process their feelings through quite as oft as well. So it just follows that they need your guidance, and your presence can almost like treat that chaos, wherein if your presence is stable and she's living in chaos in her head in the moment or whatever, and your presence is stable, there's just a natural transaction there between humans, wherein if you are this leadership role and you are stable, it will soothe the minds of the other. This replicates in leaders of politics, in leaders in what, even in movies or whatever, or you just want to see. If the leader's panicking, everyone's going to panic. If the leader doesn't know what to do and is freaking out and all of that, if there isn't one stable person for everyone to orient around, everyone loses their shit, and then the decision making process and the behavior of everybody is total chaos, because it's subject to the feeling of the moment. So you go ahead, Wartorn.
Yeah, just imagine how you feel when you're hungry and then you become angry and it's really hard to make choices that are grounded in reason.
Yeah.
That is a constant like existence for women. I don't mean to say it like I'm in a bad way. I'm just being realistic. And women don't trust men that are subservient to them because they don't trust in them like pulling them back from making the wrong choice.
Yeah. Yeah, they can't trust that. They can't trust that anything you do is an authentic affection for her. It's very clear to them that you are doing a little dance for their approval because you want them to fuck you. This is like the first insufferable thing they come across, is you do the dance, you any form of any dance, even pickup artistry, it comes off to them in the beginning as, oh, it's smooth because it's exciting to them, that it spikes their emotions up and down. But eventually they just kind of wisen up to it, in that they know it's not serious, and they know it's not stable, and they know it's not to be trusted, because it has an end goal. It has a transactional expectation, and it is still subordinate. You know, that's why I could never really get all that into game. And anybody who listens to this who is like a game head ass, they'll say, "Oh, you're just coping because you couldn't get laid or something." And it's like the literal like week I was like even just like texting multiple women at once. The I couldn't explain, like it's hard to explain, but the thing is too, this presumes that women like don't attach to you in some way. They don't attach to you if they don't take you seriously. And they don't take you seriously both if you're a simptard and if you're a PUA type. The So these PUA types are convinced, well, you could just do this anyway because women aren't going to care. They're not going to get hurt by it. But if you're just like a basic functioning, relatively masculine man, they like instantaneously fall in love with you, and it breaks their hearts like like in a way that you just can't not feel awful about it, and you can't not feel you're doing something wrong to arrange for texting multiples of them. It's just always, it'll never feel good about. And so all that's to say that the premise of eternally just try to get laid and try to get women's approval is subordinate. And what's interesting too is the idea that, well, that's actually still subordinate to women. Some guys will still take that as an informatic for them to rearrange their approach to attracting women. And it's still, while you still need to understand how to attract women, it still operates in eternally trying to get the approval of women. And this is where it needs to become every combination of develop your self-esteem, develop your sense of self, develop your confidence, develop the understanding that you're never going to feel better about yourself just because women want to fuck you, but rather develop the understanding of what is the actual want and or need. And all that is the monogamous relationship. That's why we all culminate eventually, even if it takes us until 40, 50 to do it, everyone culminates in marriage eventually. Like these PUA type guys, eventually they're going to get married, or at the very least want to get married or try to get married. And so it just follows that that's ultimately the need, the actual genuine mammalian need, spiritual need, and promise of fulfilling life. So you go ahead, Wartorn.
Yeah, a lot of the times this gay game shit doesn't work is because a lot of women are playing games, like, oh, but the problem is their games, they don't always have like a winnable outcome. They're just playing.
Yeah, Barbie, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, women most definitely play games. I know because I am one. Women don't even necessarily play games to be vindictive. Some do, but a lot don't. A lot of it is, like you said, that we live in a perpetual state of subjectivity and how we feel.
Yeah.
And shit testing often comes when we smell weakness. And for women, weakness in a male, we're looking for predominantly a male that can protect us and a male that can, sort of protect us from ourselves and protect us from the world around us. We're very Disneyfied. A lot of women, even hardcore feminists that I've met, a lot of them are very Disneyfied, and they still love the idea that that man will come along and he'll protect them and he'll make the world a better place for them to be in. And so the shit testing starts when we smell weakness, because we're like, could this guy actually stand up to the challenge? And then the problem is that a lot of guys get to the point where they start becoming performative, because they want to have more sex with you, or because they just want to do the happy wife, happy life thing. Women are becoming, very aware of that, and they get bored and they piss off with a chat. And that is actually happening. But I think some accountability has to be on the male as well. I think the issue is the infantilization of women is a big problem.
Yeah.
Seeing women as children is a really stupid idea. Women have rich inner wells and they're smart. Yeah, we're very emotional and we operate on a different system, but that doesn't mean that it's not sophisticated. It's just different. And men have to be leaders, really. But what men do is they tend to try and be managers. They tend to try and be parents. It's
Hmm.
not sexy and it's not long-term goal strategy. It's not gonna. I don't want to marry. I wouldn't want to marry my dad. Do you know what I mean? They'll just go back to their,
Yeah.
it's not attractive. And but men are like, oh, they're just children. They need to be told what to do. Whereas really, saying no to a woman, believe it or not, might feel not counterintuitive because you think, oh, I'm not giving them what they want. But women actually find that really attractive. I know it sounds weird, but they do. Women love it when men say no.
Yeah, absolutely. War-Torn, you go ahead.
Actually, no, I'm just kidding. You're absolutely right. A lot of the times, being emotional is a bad thing, but sometimes it's a good thing because men tend to go to the extreme and shut off all their emotions, and they need the woman to bring them back to like humanity, I would say, because we can go off the deep end really easily as well.
Yeah, and Barbie brings up a good point of women want authenticity, and that's how shit tests evolved and all of that. And that's one of the reasons why they resent game too, right? Because game is provides betas the opportunity to masquerade as alphas, and then you get into that's why a lot of them want abortion too, just in case they mistake a beta for an alpha. And so all that's to say, and to her point, there is like this game of, well, haha, LOL, girls are just like big fat babies. And it's like the average person is a big fat baby, so sure, you could extend that to women, but this idea that also treating them as if they're big fat babies also grants them license to misbehave and to be fickle and chaotic and not you know force them to grow and develop and become actual adults. And it's like, to her point, relating to a woman as if she's just some sort of, you know, little baby to order around, that's not going to be fulfilling for you either. That's only fulfilling if you need an ego boost to, tell somebody else what to do and feel like a tough guy. And so there's a lot of themes here. I think power is a big theme of it too, and the propensity to inflict emotional harm or to carry somebody's life into chaos. And so I'm losing a little thought here. So we got quite a few speakers here. So if anybody's been itching to say something, by all means. I have some of my key Marchese lieutenants here. I know some of you guys
Yeah, I
hosted
was just
spaces.
trying to figure out whether I was going to crash out or not, but I guess I don't think I need to. But like, I just get irritated when people talk about like simpy men and this and that. Like, listen, men are the fucking truck drivers. We are the mechanics. We work on the oil rigs. We are electricians, plumbers, uh, farmers, fishermen, putting food on the table. I mean, so simp or no simp, we're running the world. And yeah, there's certain behaviors need to be corrected, but men are good at self-calibrating as well. Uh, so yeah, I just wanted to, there's always the argument, what about the men though? And it kind of, um, gets kind of old really fast.
Yeah, well, I think women often live in this like psychosocial realm. So they might see a man who's like a plumber or whatever, but that doesn't always signal to them that he's capable of what she needs. We know what it takes to do that, and we know that, at the very least, that is like a foundational thing worth respect on a societal scale. But what they really are asking for is every combination of, if something goes wrong, can you stay grounded? If you are relating to me, are you relating to me just because you want something out of it, or are you genuinely relating to me? They're also investigating, whether you're capable of going further, and not what's the word, getting complacent. And so they're living in this psychosocial realm. It's very clear to us when a man at the very least has like a baseline level of masculinity, he does something, he's in some way contributive to society. There's also this psychosocial component that often gets overlooked. Wartorn, you go ahead.
Yeah, the psychosocial thing, like you said, a big problem is that women tend to compare things about themselves to increase their value, their status. And a lot of the times they treat like men like purses. I mean, I know they do that. It's a problem. They can't really change it, you know, but it's a problem that's with the whole sex, I guess. But I guess it's the same with, men and certain factors, but it's more things like, oh, I can bench 225 or crap like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, Barbie, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the thing is about hypergamy is that it's not going to go away. It never did. I mean, for me, it's always been a thing. Women have always wanted to date up. And yeah, there is a status in, one thing, I mean, Andrew Tate got that right. I know there's a lot of problems with Andrew Tate, but one thing he's always said is that women love status.
I'm glad you bring up hypergamy too, because a lot of guys have been like a hypergamy spurging for over like 10 years now. And while it's certainly something worth noting, I mean, every transaction ever is hypergamous. When you go to the car dealership, you would like to pay less for a better car. Like that's what it means to be hypergamous. You are trying to get more and give less. And so all that's to say that women have a biological proclivity for that because their propensity to reproduce is much more precious, much more lower in quantity or capability. And so it just follows that they are going to hold out in some way or try to maximize that because they don't have it in quantity, it's in quality. So now, when these guys who hypergamy spurg, though, they kind of present it as like big fat meanie bitches, women are freaking hypergamous and they think that goes like so hard if you're retarded. Like they just kind of say it with this quippiness where they think they're like, you know, saying the hard part out loud that women are a bunch of bitches or something. And it's like men are hypergamous too. If you're offered the chance to fuck some hotter Stacy or something, like they're going to too. And so this just follows from that transactionalism. And so it begs the question of what is the implication, though? If they do sort of have this biological proclivity for hypergamy, what does that actually mean? Well, this just investigates, like, do we really think that, you're married to somebody for 20 years and instantaneously any woman under any circumstance will drop the marriage at the top of a hat to go fuck Brad Pitt or something? And this gets into, are women or anybody just eternally ruled by their Coomer lizard brain, or are there some people who have transcended that and evolved a greater sophistication? I think the hypergamy meme too also, you know, it follows to investigate hypergamy from the average marriage, but the average marriage is composed of average people. And what is the average man like? The average man, really both the average woman too, are both sort of schlubs, are mediocre. And so if a woman is presented with the chance to fuck Chad, there's also this layer to it wherein they view fucking Chad as a foot in the door to get him to commit to her. And that's like one of their eternal problems too, is they conflate sexual approval with emotional approval or a propensity to emotionally commit. It's the women think men are bigger women meme, wherein they think, well, if he has sex with me, it must be because he's like some way committed or emotionally, because that's why I would have sex with him. And so all that's to say, hypergamy is worth noting, but simultaneously, like if you just in some level advance your life a little bit, you don't have to be a success bro. But on some level, if you advance your life a little bit, and if you are a and if you marry somebody who is just not a tits out club whore, like you're generally going to be safe from hypergamy. And is there always an inherent risk in any possible thing you do? Sure. Like she could go insane. I had a friend, he was married, and like his wife, like, for I was working with him, this was kind of funny. His wife was like browsing like the internet and stuff and browsing like turbo schizoid, like health red pills. And she went down some kind of rabbit hole of like drink CLR because we're all building up calcium in our organs and all of that. And it's funny, he was a biochemist, so he was like, yeah, to his wife, yeah, actually don't fucking do that. That's kind of not how that works. It's not one chemical reaction. It's kind of like what happens is fucking complicated is the answer. And like a few weeks later, he told me his wife went schizoid and like thought he was like this actual schizoid. Like she whipped out the firearm and she was saying how he's like after her in some way and all her friends online know the deal and all of that. So like, but do we really think that we have to doomsday prepare for that level of unlikelihood? I think the answer is no. So I'm glad you brought up hypergamy. War Torn, you go ahead.
Yeah, for your hypergamy thing. I mean, you're not always going to be like the most Chad or whatever, but at the very least, you could just try to be like her Chad, cause like not everybody's going to cheat, but like it's a lot of people are content with becoming and staying mediocre. And the same thing can be for women. I mean, you could just be his Stacy and shit, and then you don't have to like worry about it. But most people are happy to stay mediocre. And when the normie thing came out with health at every size, they got even worse.
Yeah, well said. There's this premise. This premise falsely presupposes that people can't just actually have any affection for each other and can't like have a valuation system of just valuing their relationship and valuing the other person and having the genuine affection for them. And so, and to your point, I was arguing with this retard yesterday. These guys were false. These guys were like, dude, fuck the same girl 40, 50 years and she just gets fat. No thanks. And it's like, first of all, we're doing the meme again wherein we just say, oh, well, sex is necessarily boring if it's with the same person. You're confusing boring or fun with the pleasure of novelty and the excitement of novelty. You can have fun having sex with the same person for 40, 50 years because it's literally sex. And this idea that sex is vastly different between people, lest we forget, what is sex? It's putting a penis in a vagina. Like, does it really get that much more different and complicated than that per person? This idea that, like, okay, so choke and slap around or whatever, play little games. I mean, and, my Christian ethic of it is like you can, there's really only so far you could take that, a lot of it becomes deviant. But if I'm just speaking from the secular view, crazy concept, but you could just do the deviant things with the same person. How does it follow to say that there's some sort of difference amongst people? And then I'll end on the part where he said, to your point about mediocrity and complacency, this idea that, oh, well, she's going to get fat. It's like, that's kind of a fucking skill issue. Like, she's only going to get fat if you're going to get fat. And I don't want to say, oh, she only gets fat because you let her. But I promise you, if you're not a fucking fat schlub yourself and you go to the gym yourself, she can't help but just by virtue of living near that, by virtue of living with you, getting up at 5 a.m, eventually she's going to too. And so, and even if she doesn't already. And there is a powerful, and this is what we were talking about, these guys are playing this gay little meme of, well, she can just leave, she could get fat and you can't divorce her because if you do, she just gets all your stuff and you can't out alpha the state. And it's like, okay,
Nah,
these
man, if she's
guys,
not useful to you, you have every
yeah,
right to ditch her.
yeah, these guys are doing this meme of, and sorry I'm going so long, I'll wrap this up. These guys are doing this autism of just completely neglecting that there is a psychosocial element that women live in all the time. All the memes about how they like interpret each other's texts and passive aggressive stuff and everything. Let me add you as a speaker real quick and then I'll finish up real quick, I promise. Women are eternally living in the psychosocial, and it follows that she will not feel like she can just fucking get fat around you if you're going to the gym. She also will not get fat if it risks losing you, because even if she gets all your stuff when she loses you, if she values the relationship, she won't want to lose you. But these autists live in this eternal meme of reading the legalities and fine print, acting like there isn't a abstract psychosocial realm, and acting like there's no such thing as people transcending their basic instincts and valuing a relationship absent its transactions. So, Barbie, you had your hand up, so you go ahead. Let me add some of these people that come in and speakers. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, hit the nail on the head. I mean, you'll never have better sex with a woman than when another woman has been flirting with you in front of her. Intersexual dynamics and competition is massive for women, and especially if we feel that there is somebody else that is going to take you away from us. Dread is really important, but it doesn't mean a lot of guys make the mistake of thinking that dread needs to be used in a sense of threatening them. I'm going to go off with another woman. I'm going to cheat on you. That is not attractive. It's not a long-term mating strategy. A woman is not going to want to have a child and settle down with a man who she thinks is going to cheat on her, but she is going to want to settle down with a guy that she thinks is a status symbol and is attractive to other women, or just is basically at a point in his life where he's very confident as a leader. So again, it comes back to not being performative, and really, like, it's not about what I was saying. It was just something Uncle Tom brought up about men. A lot of it is to do with perception. Feminism is here now and it's not going away. And I don't mean that as a woman, like, oh, we're not going anywhere. What I mean is not that I'm putting it on men. I'm saying that it's not going away, and it's the time now that men have to adapt to the situation at hand. I think that a lot of men as well, one of the biggest problems for men is that when you find out who their mentors are, a lot of their mentors are PUAs who've pretty much black pilled, who've lost all respect for women, who've lost all idea of the idea that they could ever have a relationship, that they could ever have long-term mating strategy. And I think that men have to be really, really careful about who they seek counsel from, and only seek counsel from strong masculine men who actually are showing results in their life, who are actually, successful, who are actually doing well as men, rather than just guys who shout stuff into the internet and it sounds good and it resonates. But actually be really careful about who you follow, because I know that sounds weird, but I think there's a lot of guys grifting out there now off men, and I think that it's quite dangerous for men because younger guys are following them.
Yeah, the real solution there is Marchese maxing. I'm the only solution there. The final solution to the woman question is Marchese maxing. I'm successfully married. I'm a gym bro. I'm moderately financially successful. So, if you guys want answers, you head on over to marchesemethods.com for one-on-one coaching, which is actually therapy. I just can't call it therapy yet, and it's base therapy at that. So I'll do that little meme there. John Nevison, you go ahead. You've been waiting
Well,
for a while.
the important, John, 1 second, an important takeaway. I know, John, that's why I'm asking to hold on. Important takeaway is that we can now, you've coined something new, and it's hypergamy. That was it.
Yo, let's go. I'm adding that. I'm going to credit you because I said hypergamy spurging, but you said it best. I'm adding that to the Marchese Maxims that I post once a week. Hypergamy. That's goated, dude. My friends are so fucking funny on here, dude. This is why I'm here every day. Okay, Warthorn, if you don't mind holding off a bit. I know you just because you've spoken quite a bit, not to be a gay egalitarian there, but Nekrashiki, you go ahead.
I like a lot of the stuff you have to say, man.
Thanks,
But
bro.
also to disagree with Jess. No, if a woman is going to be fat and I'm in a relationship with her, that's disrespecting my boundaries. That's disrespecting me. And she should have that fucking fear of leaving, right? If she's not good enough, if she's not useful to me, if she's not attractive to me, like, fuck yeah, I'm a fucking ditch her. I won't even cheat on her. I'll fucking ditch her. Like, why the fuck would I go with another woman and come back? I ain't even coming back at that point, right? It's like,
Yes.
cause, even a woman who, stays like cute for me, she's probably, they tend not to be very useful in other areas anyway. So, if she won't even do that, I mean, yeah, sorry, Jabba, but, I'm going on a fucking wild ride to the galaxy. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of women think that all it takes to make a man happy is to be hot, and it's like, okay, but every girl is hot. So at least if you have high T. And so not to shit on anybody who has like, feels strongly about their different tastes in women and everything, but all that's to say that like a lot of women think all it takes to make a man happy is to fuck him, and it's like that's something every woman is capable of. Like there has to be a little bit more of a stronger investment. Just like how women want to feel like women, men want to feel like men. And so it would follow that there's a procedure, there's a way to do that. So good point there. Wartorn, you go ahead.
Yeah, to use the meme that they're always going after Chad and they want to go back to Chad, become Chad and you won't have any problems, or become her Chad. Same thing for women. The problem solves itself.
Yeah, I'll say real quick, and the Chad meme, the Chad versus the beta meme, and oh, why do I go for the bad guy? This is women's like actual discipline problem, and this is like the actual crux of women's like battle for their existence, battle for their livelihood, and that is they need to learn how to not rely on feelings to inform their decisions. Like the Chad problem or the bad boy problem is they're forever relying on their feelings to inform their decisions, and specifically they think that good relationship with man equals extreme feelings, and they can't understand that there's when you feel stable and when you're actually like a stable human being, your emotional state is stable. And so further, there's a layer to it wherein if when do their emotions spike, it's not just with Chad, but it's when some guy who could even be good looking and everything emulates their father. Our models for our relationships to the opposite sex is how we related to the opposite sex parent. It's just like a coding in our brain wherein it's I related to this is the first woman I've ever met. Is my mom. So how I relate to her is the model for how I relate to women, and it just programs deep inside our brains when we're like 3 to 5 years old, such that if that relationship was problematic or had issues, you are going to emulate that forward, and then you're going to have problematic relationships, which you feel or which you go after based on how exciting they are. So sorry to keep that long. We got Simp Shamer. You go ahead.
You're a veteran, huh?
Yes, sir.
Were you in the army or what?
I was in the army, and if you go to my profile under my articles tab, I tell the story of how I turned down the vaccine. I was in from 2019 to 2023. I was a 15 whiskey, which is a shadow operator, drone pilot for you heckin' civilians. And yeah, so I tell that story.
You don't have to dive in deep if you want to. I'm just curious because aren't you? So you were an officer? Did you have to be an officer to be a drone pilot? Correct?
That's for Air Force. For Army, you can be enlisted for that.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'm part of the military, but I was only in for from '05 till 2012. So it was
Okay, wow.
way back when you got back in the day. I was not a badass. So I was a fucking nerd, dude. But anyways, uh, so you're a young buck and you're married.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. I just have several questions. Now I'm not trying to shit on you or anything. I just got to ask these
Yeah.
questions because sometimes some of the shit that I hear sometimes kind of like cringe to me. But
Yeah.
so you advocate for marriage.
Yes, sir.
What benefits does a man get out of a state marriage?
Yeah, so I mean the state marriage argument. So the reason why, well, I shouldn't say the reason why we got state married, but long story short, I'll just say we needed that legal paperwork. And so, but in terms of legal state marriage as it exists, like I really don't have a counter argument for the prospective legalities and the she can divorce you and everything. I'll just say that I would encourage everyone to be self-honest insofar as really evaluate how much of a risk that actually poses. Like on some level you can pick a woman that at the with low risk of doing that, and I would say that a lot of guys are just using that as an excuse to avoid intimacy. And not, I know we're all tired of libtards, Barnes and Noble psychologizing us, but I'm training to be a therapist, and this is just like truth. Is that people will use that as a crux to excuse avoiding intimacy because they're afraid of intimacy. And not saying you do this, but
I know. I'm not gonna put
yeah,
myself on the line like that.
yeah.
But
So
go ahead, continue. Then I'll continue on.
I'll just say that if you want to be with somebody, and if you're really genuinely afraid of the legal implications of marriage, you could go through it. You could have a healthy, stable relationship and go through the church aspect. Some retard was huffing and puffing at me yesterday. Well, the state's going to treat that the same way, and it's like, look, you could die tomorrow. On some level, you could get in a car crash, you could die. Okay. That might suck if she takes half your stuff or whatever, but there's inherent risk in everything. So, to answer your question, I don't really have much of a counter argument for the, like, do men get anything legally out of marriage? All I could say is, in the end, you're going to want to be with somebody and start your family that
So,
way.
okay, I agree with that last portion, but I can give you a good counter argument that you can tell other people. Just be like me, guys. Yeah, live in your soft guy era. Drizzle, baby. Find ourselves a rich ass hoe, man. And then hell yeah, we'll get married to that shit. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but
The virgin tries to get married and be rich so that she doesn't have to work. Versus the Chad marries a rich girl so that the Chad, your wife uses you for sex. That's based.
no, I'm good, man. I was kind of like, I like to throw that because I started this whole drizzle shit a few years ago, and then I just wanted to bring it back a little bit. But and on my last thing here, what I so man, this is the cringe part that I hate asking. I asked another big YouTuber this shit. He felt embarrassed, but it's not an embarrassing. I don't think it's an embarrassing question, but what makes you? Do you consider yourself a dating coach,
No,
a
well,
marriage counselor, baby,
I'll title myself as life coach because my operative telos.
life
So
coach?
just to give you, because a lot of people meme that it's like, oh, you're hecking gwifto, you're hecking freaking gwifto, and it's like, okay, you just hear that word on the internet and think about it too much. The service I sell you is, firstly, so my operative philosophy is eyes on the prize, and that really is the crux of everything I teach, wherein you will be trying all of these things and you have to ask yourself, is this working? And if you've identified the prize and you can feel within your heart that this thing isn't working, when I was doing like a lot of PUA shit, I asked myself, is this working? Is this making my life better? And the answer was no. So I said to myself, it's time to be honest with myself and investigate what else I have to do and what this is doing for me and all of that. So I call myself a life coach because, firstly, I can't call myself a therapist yet. I mean, I technically can. I can't use terms like mental health counselor or anything like that because I'm not certified yet. But I also call myself that because I believe all of this stuff is, or I don't believe, I know this stuff is all interrelated. So to say I'm a dating coach or a physical trainer or something belies and betrays the point. And I'll just add to you one point. Specifically, an example is the fitness stuff is really like my origin story. So if I'm using the fitness model, right? I will never, I can give, like, everyone here can Google a fitness plan. Everyone here can Google workouts. I can even tell you what workouts I Googled, how I Googled it. That's some of my articles that I publish. And the reason I do that is because the fitness problem isn't an informational problem. A lot of these problems aren't informational. These problems are behavioral and emotional. And that's the part where you hire me to help you in that, especially with fitness, right? We all know the information's out there, but everyone's still obese. And specifically, everyone is still coping or a part of classical cope theory, wherein the advice is really just deeply embedded excuses to fuck off and stay mediocre. Right. So it's not just obesity. It is the mediocrities. Everyone has been in the gym and has seen like the seething. I call them the seething 3 times a week 800 milligrams of caffeine bro who works out for 20 minutes and then huffs and puffs that he's not big because he's, doesn't do steroids or something. And so all that is to say that I operate as a life coach because all of these things are behavioral problems. I have no problem answering basic questions of like workouts and stuff because that's all Googleable anyway. So that's my answer
Yeah.
to your question.
You know, one more thing before I hop off. Before I know these guys are raised their hands, but do you ever think about, I don't know, shaming, bullying? I think that we need to bring that back. Don't you
I
think?
think shame and bullying is kind of analogous to, and if you're like a nerd, this is a really nerdy analogy, but if you've read any of like the lore of Star Wars, some of the lore is that the Jedi Masters are the only ones who have access to the Jedi library section that details some of the dark side of the Force. And that is because they've reached a level in which they could be trusted to walk that very fine line. So I would argue that shame and bullying is a thing, right? We certainly, fat people, and this is the dichotomy between like leftist tards. They've always felt ashamed, and so they've banded together in this collective unconscious strategy to ameliorate that by just saying that we shouldn't be ashamed in the first place. And that obviously doesn't work because shame is inherent, shame is internal, and shame is, by definition, a motivator for becoming your ideal self. But it can become maladaptive, it can become pathological. And when other people shame other people, I think a lot of the times that's just people off putting their own shame for themselves, right? So, for example, when I was in the army, and you know this, a lot of these guys are fat. They don't fucking work out. The workouts are half assed. They're
Shoot,
bullshit.
Air Force
Yeah.
are fat fucks, dude.
Yeah.
Even after I got out, I'd never let myself go. I
Yeah.
just can't do it.
Right.
I keep my nice six pack, and I'm not a big dude. I'm a skinny
Right.
guy.
And so,
But man,
so,
I'm like, how
but
the fuck?
these mediocrities in there abuse the image of, well, I'm in the army, so I do workouts and all of that. And they play this game of pointing out when somebody else is obese and all that. And I say, sometimes on some level, there is actually a genetic component wherein a lot of these mediocrities, their behavior is not that much different from the obese person, but they get to shame the obese person because the obese person is ostensibly more lazy or something like that. But their behavior is the same and they're just as inauthentic and just as inconsistent as the obese person. And so I'll follow this by saying that shame shame as a society on a societal structure for wrongdoing or what's the collectively agreed wrongdoing is a good thing, but I think a lot of people abuse it, and it is a very fine line to walk to the wherein it becomes maladaptive. A lot of people's problems is they feel a very deep shame within themselves that's counterproductive. So to answer your question succinctly, sorry, that is that shame is a fine line to walk. People who shame others are really just coping with their shame for themselves. And I think that shame is like a sort of the sprinkles of motivating yourself to do something, the sprinkles on the cake, but isn't the cake. The
How
cake
about
is
I got a better one for you. How about men should start accepting constructive criticism? How about that?
so constructive criticism, but like, the average person who gives quote unquote constructive criticism, and I'll let everyone speak after this. The average person who gives constructive criticism is, duh, hey, you're fucking fat fuck. And it's like, okay, really? Like, grow up. That's not constructive criticism. That's just playing your game of shaming somebody to offload your shame of yourself. So constructive criticism is kind of what I do, right? And that manifests as getting people to have the accountability of knowing that they did something wrong, but you don't have to self-flagellate about it. It's wrongdoing, and this is a great way to say it succinctly. A lot of people get this stuff with discipline and shame wrong. Discipline is not preoccupation with forbidding the wrong thing, but rather preoccupation with actively doing the right thing, such that you do the right thing so much that you forget to do the wrong thing. But if you eternally self flagellate, the wrong thing still enters your mind. And when the wrong thing still enters your mind, you eventually just still do it. So I know we're having a good dialogue here, but a couple of people have had their hands raised for a while. So I don't know who went first between John Nevison and Necro. I see John, you unmuted first, so you go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So, yeah, I guess I mostly agreed with most of what I heard, and I mean, almost the last hour now I've been here. But two thing I heard that sounded pretty fallacious to me. The first one was it's basically, I would say, this false equivalence you establish is between when you were talking about hypergamy and either guys or gals going for a good deal at the car dealership, the grocery store, whatever, however you might, whatever example you would want to pick. The thing is that the very word hypergamy gamy means, what's the fucking word, means a combination, a meeting of the two sexes, essentially. It's like marriage and all that. So it's this very particular thing. It's not just like seeking a good deal in day-to-day lives. Furthermore, it's like, I would say, both would be based on the opportunistic impulses, but for one of them, for women trying to date up is not the same as me going to the grocery store and trying to find the most cheap bag of apples I can find. It's a bit more. There's way more that goes in the process of the former than the latter. So that's what's I would think that was kind of a fallacious argument to make. And the second one was, said the claim you made is more of a secondary thing, but you says, as long as you keep in shape, you keep yourself to a higher standards, she'll be nothing but compelled to do the same. So I would say that's also a pretty false assumption, because I don't have any kind of studies to back this up right there and now, but I would say we've all walked around in public in very crowded places. I'm pretty sure, at least in North America, we've all seen at least several couples, even in just one day in the public place, where you see a man that's fairly in shape and the woman is totally out of shape. Like, just speaking for myself, even my own family, a guy, one uncle who seriously got himself back into shape because he was starting to let himself go, admittedly, but then he really got himself into seriously good fucking shape, especially for a man in his, at the time, in his early 50s. And now he's, this 30 years later, he's still keeping himself to the same standard. But his wife, who is an absolute sweetheart, by the way, so I'm not shitting on her, but she has been nothing but letting herself go from the very first kid to the last. Like, she's never went back to I mean, even when they were married back in the day, admittedly, she was already kind of on the thicker side, to be honest, but especially when the three kids went one after the other fertile coast, still, like, she never went back to anything that's a reasonable size compared to him. And that's just one example, obviously. But the point is, it's a false assumption to believe that just because you hold yourself at a higher standards in all relationship, for that matter. It's not just a romantic relationship. Like, you can be an absolute stud of a man, and if you just let yourself being surrounded by jackasses and losers, you'll still find people around you who don't reciprocate to the standard that you treat yourself and you treat them too. It's like, it's not. Unfortunately, reciprocity is not the by default feature of humans. So many of us do operate on that basis, but it's not by default by any means. So especially for women, you may keep yourself in tip-top shape, but it's no guarantee whatsoever that it's gonna compel her to the same. So you should do it for yourself, because it's the best way, as far as I'm concerned, to live life, to be your best self on all fronts, financially, physically, and all that. So that's just something, it's like the old saying, like, something is its own reward. Like, in this case, like, strength is its own reward, excellency is its
I agree with that.
So yes, I would say I always said 100% agrees with. I mean, you're not by far by any means the first, and I know you know that too. That you go all the way back to Socrates. It's always been said that men should hold themselves to the highest possible standard, and that's absolutely true. But you shouldn't conflate it with a guarantee of anything else. Anything else that then is something that then a guarantee for your own life to be of a higher quality, your quality of life to be of a higher standard, because the rest of the world will either not care, or they'll just do whatever they feel like doing themselves. Like, you being a stud is a guarantee of nothing but yourself living like a stud, is all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I don't want to thumbing me down to oblivion, but
yeah, no, you're good. I'll just give you
I was just
I'll just
thumbing
give
you
him a
down.
quick answer, because he rightfully criticized my
the
take. So
right thing.
I'll just give you a quick answer. So you're saying that the hypergamy is more so like an opportunistic sort of constant seeking for the better partner thing, and it's more so specific to this opportunism. Whereas, the supermarket example is, yeah, you're just sort of browsing. It's almost like you're browsing before you get the thing. And, whereas hypergamy is you already got the thing and now you want to trade up. I'll
Yeah,
just
well,
say,
there's that.
I'll just
It's
say that
almost
my
just like,
criticism. So when I make that point is, I think the point I'm making is not so much that it's the same, like, logistically, but I'm making the point that the portrayal of hypergamy as some sort of, women are big fat meanies thing. I just mean that when I make the analogy, I'm making the analogy that every transaction includes people having a lookout for what's best for themselves. And my point is that trying to say that's a product of being a big fat meanie is not really like a sound thing. And so, but you're right in that trying to get the best deal at the supermarket, it's sort of like tacitly mean by that standard, right? Because you're trying to pay less for more, so the other guy makes less money. So, but then in a relationship context, it's a much more intimate, I guess betrayal, you could say. So on some level, it is the like a bigger, fatter, meanie thing to do, but the
yeah.
inherent
Well, I agree with
drive
that.
to, yeah,
But
and I'm almost done. The inherent drive to be to get the best deal, and hypergamy is a version of that. What I'm saying is trying to say that's like mean or necessary evil is not there. And then your point about the idea that your influence doesn't guarantee that she'll leave. Well, I'm not saying it guarantees, but by the same token, if that doesn't guarantee that she won't leave, what's your guarantee that she
no,
will
I didn't
leave?
say leave though. Yeah, I
So
said that. Or so what you said, like keeping herself, while not leaving the relationship, keeping herself to the same standard as you. You submit yourself to. That's what I said. I didn't meant like as far as leaving, that's a whole different level of fucked up. But I think even just expecting again someone, whether a girlfriend or a bunch of friends around you, to hold themselves to the same standard just because you yourself project your own standard around you. Like it may help, but it's no guarantee whatsoever. So you shouldn't be sold to anyone whatsoever as something like that. It's just something that you should do for yourself. But just selling that to especially young men is kind of setting them up for bitter disappointment, because I've seen it for myself. Like, yeah, I'm not the greatest stud whatsoever around, but to just even friends I've tried to prop up and push them to be better physically, even though I show them my own gains and all that, and just how much better it made my life. It still doesn't suffice in many occasions to push them to do the same. So it's the
yeah,
same for
it's
women,
it's
but
no
that
guarantee,
she's
but
gonna leave.
by the same token, there's no guarantee that she'll gain weight necessarily either. So I know we're having good dialogue, but let's stand by so that
That's not what it could either.
Nekroshiki, you go ahead. I know you've been waiting a while, so feel free to take your time. And then we got everyone else. Nekroshiki there.
He dipped. He's
Oh,
not
okay.
there.
He still shows up on my screen. But
Jess was next, I
okay.
think.
I saw Barbie's hand up too. Is she here? Okay.
Yeah, that's
Oh, okay.
Jess. Yeah.
Barbie, you go ahead.
Damn it, Jess, speak. Speak, woman, I command
She
you.
fell asleep too. She fell asleep. It's like 2 a.m. where she's at or something like that.
She
Bitch.
unmuted for a second there.
Um, she did. Yeah, she did unmute. Maybe
All right.
something
So Uncle Tom,
happened.
you
Oh,
go
she
ahead.
had tech issues. Yeah. So the hypergamy thing, I think when it's used currently, it's a lot of it ties back to the narrative around, divorce. We know kind of have an idea of the different stats floating around about that. So the issue is that these women are mostly like leaving happy marriages, at a 70 or this whatever better thing that they're searching for. And men, even in the face of obesity. Oh, you like what I did there instead of the face of adversity?
Yeah,
The face of adversity.
you're cooking.
Even the face of obesity, men aren't actually. So, um, so I think it's I get what you were saying about hypergamy and like just in our daily lives, but I think where it becomes problematic is when you're breaking up happy homes for this allure of whatever it is the woman is looking for.
You're cutting out, Tom.
Yeah, we got Barbie's back, so Barbie, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, sorry, I was speaking before, but it glitched. I think to put a more positive spin on what John was saying and what you were saying. I mean, I'm not trying to say something different. I'm just saying it's about risk minimization. The fact is that if you don't look after yourself, and this is male or female, the other person is going to be less likely to be attracted to. That's a fact. And you absolutely should do it for yourself. The fact is, you can be the most attractive person in the world. You can earn an absolute fortune. You can, provide everything for a woman, and she could go round tomorrow and sleep with some random ugly guy for excitement. There is absolutely nothing you can do to control that. But what you can do is minimize the possibility of that happening. So it's about taking positive risk. The fact is, if you look after yourself in a relationship, you're going to have the biggest fighting chance of keeping that person in your life, and also keeping the sense of sexual dread. And as I said, sexual dread is a big motivator, especially for women. And that's just a really important thing to remember. So yeah, I think it is. It's just more. I'm not trying to tell you something that you don't already know, but I'm just saying if you frame it in a different mindset, it doesn't feel like such a chore, because I think a lot of guys live with the whataboutisms, and so do women. It's like what's the point? I'm going to do all this and she's going to leave anyway because she's a bitch. And it's like, she might, but at the end of the day, you've got to take a positive risk at some point. So you've got to see it as like, it's just all about risk assessment.
Yeah, well said. I mean, like if a woman even does that anyway, like you didn't have a marriage in the first place, even if it's ostensibly happy. You married like a bonehead retard anyway. Part of that risk mitigation, to your point, is not marrying a total fucking egghead. And to your point too, like what's the distribution of women who are actually doing this? And so, you know, not doing that, not all X are like that meme, but it follows to, investigate the distribution of how often this happens, under what circumstances does it happen. And I just say that if somebody has the propensity to do that anyway, you didn't have a marriage in the first place. So I know we got a good number of people in here.
Sorry, my mic got messed up. Did you respond to what I had said?
What was your was it like a question or a criticism?
Oh, no, it was more of just speaking to the hypergamy aspect, in that it's more about when it's referred to currently, from what I've heard, is like related to marriage and, the, in women, getting divorced at such a high rate, that's the hypergamy we're referring to, is that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the divorce rates are high, and there's quite a few factors of going into that. I mean, sure, hypergamy can be a major driving force of that, but it's also false hypergamy in that they think they can do better, but they can't, and they think there's no risk in doing so, but there is. And we see this as evident in these women who, after that, those divorces, they regret it. And so, like you could make the argument that, well, whether it's hypergamy or not, the divorce rates are high enough that just statistically, how can I feel safe in getting married? And the answer is, like, you can, the statistical range is high, but that's also because the amount of normies are high, and normies are forever living in their little worlds of whatever it is, mediocrity. Those retarded women who do leave because of hypergamy, like they're retarded in thinking that they'll do so. So, and this isn't like, this is tough. This is an issue. In fact, this is like a thousands of years old issue. People have been eternally complaining about how do they relate to the opposite sex. It's every fucking song. It's every movie is about relating to the opposite sex. It's clearly like a crucial part of our lives, and it preoccupies a ton of us. And it's also emotionally dangerous. It is complicated. And so it would follow to just sort of look at those numbers and say, there's quite a risk here. So there's risk mitigation that doesn't guarantee anything, but it does mitigate such risk. So I'm not quite sure that fully answers your question, but in short, I'm not saying that it's not warranted to investigate those statistics and find them not intimidating, but find them profound. So I think Necroshiki still shows up on my end with his hand raised, but you guys said he's not showing up on your end. So if there's anybody here,
Yeah, just for my take on it, yeah, his hand still shows up. But for my take on it, I mean, it doesn't necessarily scare me. Although I would have made that mistake. So it's easy for me to say because I didn't end up making that mistake, but I was kind of close to it. So it's easy for me to say, I don't mind taking the risk, but some who've already taken the risk probably wouldn't want to do it again. I guess a lot do. But, uh, yeah, I mean, I get, I could see why men wouldn't want to, especially married to the state,
yeah,
versus just the church. But the question is now, it's like, do you want to even do it in this country if you're in the States? So I think it's better just go where there's a little bit more godly people.
based
Philippines.
apartment.
So yeah, go somewhere else, Eastern Europe somewhere.
I think Mike, if you're comfortable, I know you have a story about this, so if you want to share the story of it, by all means. But if you're not, if you don't, if that's too intense, don't bother.
What was the question again?
I think you have a story that relates to this idea of, the divorce and making the mistake of marrying somebody that it winds up ending up in divorce. Maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I blame myself on that, with my first wife, cause, I just tell men never, always vet the woman that you're going to be with. I kind of rushed into it. I'm in my late 20s, got out of the Marine Corps, finished college, business is booming, making excellent money now. And I was like, okay, now time to have the wife, big house, white picket fence. But I'm against marriage. My mom was always pushing that in my head. But obviously I didn't follow those rules 100%. I always say keep women on keep them walking on eggshells. Don't ever give women 100% assurance. I know there's risk in marriage. Yeah, I know that some of you are going to disagree with me on this, but it's the truth, and it sucks it has to be that way because the way society and the laws that are in place. But, there's no security for men. It's a win-win for a woman. It's a lose-lose for a man. And again, I know some are going to disagree with it, but it's the truth. Whether the man's broke or he has money, yes, the man, if he has nothing, he's not really going to lose anything, but, he might not lose money, but he might lose custody of his kid. So there's different aspects of what you'll lose, whether you're broke, rich, whatever. The way I did my second marriage is I married to the church. You can still get the same benefits as a state marriage. She could take your last name. Cause women will say, well, you can get the tax benefits. You can get the same tax benefits not being, contract through the state marriage, doing it my way. I see a difference because I've been on both sides. So, today's society, marriage is not the best option for men, and it sucks it has to be that way. So I know, what's his name brought that up earlier of what benefit does the wife bring to the table compared to a girlfriend. It's the same thing. It's just the title of wife or girlfriend. That's basically it. But, yes, and I'm not putting anyone down that is married or thinking about getting married. You at the end of the day, you go ahead and make that decision for yourself, and I hope it works out. I hope you never go through a divorce. But yeah, even though I didn't get screwed over due to a prenuptial agreement, it's just the stress that I had to go through, and divorce is very costly, even if you don't lose anything. Family law and divorce attorneys are very, very expensive. And, I know Marchese had brought it up. Most normies don't have this money. And think about when you're trying to save yourself, trying to pay these lawyers off, and you lose your lawyer in the mid process. because it's so damn expensive and all that. But yeah, I mean, and again, not all women, but overwhelmingly a majority of women, will screw you over. That's just the sad truth. It is the truth. And the majority of men are not bad men. There's more good men than there are good women. There's more bad women than there are good women. And, yeah, there's my rant. I'm probably sure I pissed off a couple of people in here.
No, that was very helpful. No, I appreciate that. It was good info.
Yeah, I would say I shared it to the wall here. Photonicus says, he makes the valid point that really, goes against what I said, which is, he said you can literally win 7 Super Bowls and be accordingly rich and your wife will still cheat. That brings into question of there's this relational component to it too. Like there's more to the relationship than just the transaction of monetary resources and whatever she gives you, sex and companionship is what she gives you, right? So there's more to this relationship than just an exchange of resources. It would follow that if that's the only lens through which we view it, naturally, to Mike's point, women are always winning and men are always losing. And I'll say that Photonicus further, it cuts off, but he says the cure seems to be to choose wisely up front, not let your wife do Brazilian jiu-jitsu with another man. And he says Leviticus solves this too. So I think that does inevitably end in the question of what does marriage really mean to us? Is it just is it a deal? Is it a handshake? I'll give you money, you give me sex. Or is there a deeper component to it that we all want and need that is absent resources, absent brain chemistry, and is a genuine authentic affection for one another such that you do not want to do this for each other or do this to each other. And I'll end on saying the value component brings forth the institution of marriage through the church, which is that you are submitting this affection to a higher level, to a power that you don't understand, and it is beyond this transactionalism. And that's where Christianity comes in, but it seems I'll let somebody else go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I guess we can assume that the Nick Crow is. I mean, I still see his hand raised on my screen, but I don't know. Maybe it's a bug or something. So just following quickly on what just been said, I was reading the post about Phoneticus before you mentioned it. I smirked at it, of course, but just to also preemptively clear a very common mistake that's still being made, especially even in those circles where we think we're at the. We're safe from normie thinking, so if falling into just repeated the thought pattern established by someone else's. But this idea is it's all feminism's fault and all that. But just to follow up on what he said in his example. I'm sorry, I'm starting to have a stroke, I think. That means obviously his example is referring to freaking Tom Brady, who's, I mean, in the current timelines, like one of probably the greatest example of the alpha uber giga supreme chat or whatever. But so you go back in, I mean, history kind of far long ago, but not that long ago, still in modern time, but enough of a far wind that past that you circumvent feminism, or at least mostly, I would say. And even you look at someone like Napoleon, who during his time, I think it's pretty safe to say was at least on the European continent, or the whole world for that matter, was probably the biggest alpha around, because he just basically stomped everyone in every other possible power in Europe, and he did so like effortlessly. But even he got the short end of the stick when it came to cheating and women and all that. So this idea that it's all feminism fault, I keep repeating ad nauseum, especially in recent time, because people still want so bad, especially tradies, like traditionalists, want so bad to see feminism as this evil, invisible ghost that goes around and possess women and makes them like commit all these horrible things. It's not. Like, feminism is, to its very core, not all of it obviously, but part of female nature, politicized and expressed in a it's through law and through lawfare and all that. It's not like just this foreign thing that just came around out of the blue and made up by the Jews or whatever. It's just something that's
John,
just,
you're gonna
just
kill
always
this
been
space,
existing
John. Come
in
on,
nature.
man. John,
Yeah, I
you're
know.
being John.
I know. I'm sorry. So I just wanted to mention that before someone wants to take the common take of they making this a strictly modern thing. It's not. It's always been around. It's just nowadays it's more easy than ever for women to do so. So yeah, sorry, okay, Tom, you're right. I'm still prone to
No, I
ranting. I'm
agree
getting
with
cured
I
myself.
agree with your take though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just the people are so lazy when it comes to studying histories. It's so simple. Like just open a book, or even simpler, just open YouTube and just pop up a history podcast or whatever. So just listen to that while you're doing something else. History isn't a linear process. It's a cycle. It's a freaking cycle it's a circle that keeps going round and round and round over and over again. The only thing that changes are tools. The rest stays the same. Like it says in the Bible, nothing new under the sun. So many people don't understand how much more literal that is than you would think it is. It's literally it literally express how things work. It's not some kind of complicated metaphor. It just is. So you, a human, don't change. That's all I'm trying to say. Woman or man.
Yeah, for sure. My new co-host here, he's a key Marchese Lieutenant, Ghost of Gibson. I haven't seen your hand raised, but do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, how's our connection?
It's good. You just sound a little low on volume,
Okay,
and I could
good.
hear
Hold
myself
on.
echo.
Oh, well, I might kind of decline to comment a lot because I'm not married, so I really appreciate everybody's input. But I will chime in when I feel like I have, some valid contributions.
Alrighty, duly noted. We've got some people. Nekrashiki still shows up here. Wartorn's ex.
Yo, what's up, man?
Hey, there you go. You're back.
Nah, sorry, I had my hat for a while. Like the conversation has moved on, but
Okay, gotcha. So you kind of
what was the last thing the person before me mentioned?
We were talking about hypergamy, I think, when you raised your hand, something related to that and like marriage, I don't know. He called on you a couple times.
Yeah, no, I apologize for that, man.
No, you're good. At the end of my spaces, I usually let everyone go around and say any lingering thoughts that they were dying to get out. So if you have that, or you still have that fresh in mind, you could just write it down. I'm pretty good with making sure everyone gets to say their thoughts, even if it's not relevant to the exact direction we're going. I'll say that this becomes a question, right? This is the eternal dilemma, the male-female relationship. This is the eternal dilemma. To John's point, it's been the dilemma forever. We observe hypergamy through history. We observe Tom Brady. His wife cheats on him. So it begs the question of, what does this really mean to us? What is marriage? What does men and women relating to each other really mean to us? What do we really get out of that? Is it just as simple as some sort of sex for money? If that's the case, why do we all relate to a woman or try to get into a relationship by any means rather than, just hire a prostitute or something, right? That's been around for a while, for many years, thousands of years, whatever it is. But why do we still choose relationship anyway if, the transaction is made and much more easily if it's like prostitution or something, right? So obviously there's something deeper here that does you know, makes sense as an explanation for things like women cheating on hot guys anyway, or guys cheating on hot girls anyway, anyway. There's a component missing of the relationship that's not transactional. I don't want to be gay and say emotional needs because that's just like turbo gay code for like nothing, women, femtards, gay code for like whatever they use that as an excuse for. But there is a deep intrinsic need met by relating to each other authentically, earnestly, honestly, uh, enthusiastically. And so how do we really get at that crux? Because when people focus on the transactionalism, it becomes this fear-mongering game of, oh, I don't want to get got, I don't want to get suckered. I don't want the deal, get suckered into a deal where I get fucked. And this is, men more recently have said it's not a good deal for us, but this was women's entire operation for a long time. When fuck them without giving them some sort of something more to it, it feels to them like you took something from them. It feels to them like you took their womanhood from them. It feels like you took their identity from them. It feels like you could even get Freudian and say, the penis envy stuff, people take that offensively, but that just means like an envy for man. And so, if you, when you give her your manliness, that's the amelioration of the Electra complex. When you give her your manness and then you strip that from her, and when it makes her feel like you took that opportunity. It's a deep need. And similarly for men, when women emasculate them, it is castration anxiety, to use Freudian terms. It feels like she took your masculinity from you. Does your masculinity originate? Where does your masculinity literally get manufactured? Testosterone is manufactured in the testes. So it would just follow that if she does something that emasculates you, it feels like she took that from you. She took your masculine identity from you, and that's very frightening because that is a vulnerability. It quite literally physically is vulnerable,
She
but
revoked
that
your
manifests
manpower.
as emotional vulnerability. So it begs the question of what's really the deeper thing to this. And I'll say there's two layers in that the person feels like their emotional needs, I guess we'll say, aren't being met, but the person also might have a maladaptive pathological behavior wherein they relate to somebody, but they're still eternally running this Python program in their mind they wrote to facilitate some kind of safety. Cheating, just like a basic version of this, well, cheating is an example of a self-protection mechanism at times. There's Coomery to it, but it's self-protectionist, wherein it's especially if you're a man, if, you're banging other girls, it sort of gives you that masculinity that, and if one woman leaves you, that masculinity is still bestowed onto you by other women. So it's not like it was taken from you. So that's one version. Women cheat, in a similar fashion to bridge that gap of that, relational component. So I guess, my question or my prompt for the floor here is what's the deeper what does relationships really mean to us, and what's the deeper need or fulfillment met from them?
Problem is that most people assume that love is something that just appear out of nowhere and carries you both. No, it's an act that it's a committed, deliberate act that needs to be reinvigorated on a daily basis. I mean, myself, I wouldn't speak from experience, but like my grandparents who were married for up to almost 65 years old before my grandfather passed a few years ago. But yeah, so that would probably be one of the first and foremost causes I've heard at least are pretty a very common mistake that people make. And so for the rest of that, yeah, previously you also asked what marriage is. I don't know, it was a rhetorical question you were actually asking that, but it's a first and foremost, not to sound like a reductionist, materialistic asshole, but it's still at the end of the day a contract. It's a contract that's supposed to bind two parties, two people to engage in at least a somewhat symbiotic relationship to build a proper foundation to raise kids. Yeah, obviously, I think most people in here won't take offense to me implying that is something that gay people can do, but it's in fact not. That's why most people were opposing that in the first place, because at the very genesis of the idea of marriage to begin with was supposed to be something. Yeah, it still should be. It still should be supposed to be the thing that's a guarantee to make sure that children aren't being raised in a dysfunctional household, like the dad going away and banging other girls or whatever, or the woman being a witch. So point being as that marriage is a contract, love isn't this magic-y, sparkly thing. It's committed, deliberate act that needs to be that needs to be recommitted on the daily, and that's pretty much it. That's what I would say about it. discipline.
Yeah, for sure. Caesar, you go ahead. Good to hear from you.
Hey man, how are you? Thank you for this space as always. Peace to everybody else in the room. Uncle Tom, Mike, Barbie, Necro, all the regulars. Good to see you. Yeah, man. I think marriage is awesome if done correctly. I think it's great, it's fruitful. The the pillars that makes it really fruitful and fun, right?
Yeah.
Is when you can you guys hear me all right? Just want to
Yep.
make sure that my Bluetooth is synced correctly. Okay, cool.
Now and
Is it
clear.
that there's a shared vision and shared values that's agreed upon before you even embark on that endeavor? Because it's something that's not to be taken lightly at all, right? I'm not an advocate of just getting married to get married because you feel obligated, like it's the next step, like it's what you're supposed to do. Like the individual that you're getting involved with, y'all should have a shared vision and a consensus on what the next year is going to look like, what the next 5 years are going to look like. And why this is proven for myself to be very beneficial is because one, it keeps you busy. It keeps you on a program. It's inevitable that things are going to get off balance, that there's going to be emotional turbulence, all the challenges that come along with that. But you still have these benchmarks that you're looking at, and it's a shared vision that's operating on a set of values that you already agreed upon. So that can look different for everybody. So, we can talk about nuance, we can talk about different personalities, what values are. There's many variations. But I found that formula produces some beautiful results, and it creates inevitably, you all each are going to pivot into your roles, into that dynamic. The masculine and the feminine principle both have their own, distinctive jobs in that dynamic. So I just want to offer 2 cents, maybe a little bit of like, optimism, a little bit of realism as well, just in that regard. But that it's work, but it can be fun work depending on that framework that's set initially. But that's all I'll say.
Absolutely. Well said. You bring up a good point about having a deeper shared vision because, a lot of people think that compatibility means like you want to do fucking chores on the same time and you like doing chores in the morning both. And if you don't, then you're incompatible. So it's good that you bring up the point about like a much deeper foundational shared vision and value system because, a lot of these retards, especially these retarded femtards online, are literally divorcing men over fucking chores. And it's like, can we grow up? Chores are not the fucking ultimate existence. You're not like the most sophisticated person on earth because you know how to do fucking chores. That's kind of like an aside rant point there. So
No, 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 but I think that's good because I think that, if you as the masculine principle are reinforcing and reminding and providing inspiration on what that greater vision is, there's always going to be that level of inertia and motivation, like in the relationship. And that goes for business as well, right? Like within a business relationship. So.
yeah, absolutely. Wartorn, you go ahead.
I think again, it's incredibly more important. I mean, back in the day, we used to die at 30 years old, so many people didn't put much importance in it because we were supposed to die really early. But as you get older, it becomes a problem because having like 10 and 20 partners and having no stability in your life creates huge problems when you start to get older and your body starts to break down and you don't have anybody to take care of you or anything.
Yeah, I think I would posit that marriage and relating to a woman or even just relating to people overall, like if you really like deeply dig into the idea of it being an authentic affection for the woman or man in women's case and an authentic admiration, we'll call it, for your friend, it if it's absent is sort of this beneficial, this consequentialism and all of that, like it at its core, that's what this all really means to all of us. And anything that strays away from that necessarily causes chaos, and especially when you try to your point, war torn, relate to multiple. We didn't think to your point, we didn't think about this much because we all died when we were like 30 or whatever, and so but now there's a much longer game to be played, and you investigate what all of that is with fucking around and all of that, it's ego and all of this. but at its core, it is not a depth of relating to somebody else. You are relating to somebody else strictly for a transaction, and you are relating to somebody with no depth and no authenticity. And what you find is that it's not transactional, but if you're not thrusting yourself into an environment wherein that's set up, if you're not thrusting yourself into a relationship with that intent, it inevitably crumbles. And what you have is you've never related to anybody deeply and authentically. And that is the crux of what we all want and need, a depth and authenticity to our relationships. You're good. I was working out in my space the other day, so that's funny that you said that, John, up on the wall. So,
Yeah, I know.
anybody else?
I know I'm
Good.
flawed. At least as maddening as I can be to listen to, I know I know what I sound like. I'm sorry. I've been trying to work on it for a while. I guess I'm not still quite there yet, but I'll make it.
Yeah, it's okay.
Wait, are you talking about your accent?
Well, no, that's already a lost cause. I meant more like the pace of what I'm saying is
Yeah, I was gonna say like it's I
Man, you're a great guy. It's so for me to follow. After like 30 seconds, I feel like I'm in chemistry class.
right. Yeah, I'm it's duly noted. I'm aware of that. Thanks.
Yeah, you're good. It's good to practice. We're all here to practice anyway. Nobody's going to shame us or anything. And, if anybody shames you or whatever, they're just like a gay retard that can't even figure out,
No, we
if you
already
can, you
established
don't,
it's good, dude. Shame is good. It's just as long as it's delivered in a constructive manner. Like, if you call me a retard, I'll just answer you. Yes, I'm already aware of that too. So thank you very much for pointing the obvious, man. But yeah, as far as
no,
my
no.
case, I'm working on it.
No, no, King. I see. I am, I am like a masculine figure and everything, but on some level, I really resent when people shame themselves, label themselves, and all that. So you're not retarded. You're fucking base and cool and epic and Chad and Alpha. Every Marchese enjoyer necessarily is a high IQ base Chad Alpha or Stacy in women's cases because you wouldn't be able to sit here and speak or listen if you were a retard anyway. So, and with
All
that being
right, let's
said,
compromise. A base retard. Let's compromise.
no, see, no, I won't let you call yourself a retard because what's an interesting thing about that is you could shame yourself and say something along the line. This is actually a good thing to think of. You can shame yourself in saying, "Oh, okay, I don't speak as well as I would like to, and it's a little bit embarrassing." But you can't say, if you label yourself as a product of that, that's like the counterproductive shame. And on some level, we feel like we have to do that to have like an acknowledged accountability or something, right? To quote unquote hold ourselves accountable. But the accountability is in I acknowledge that I'm not the best speaker and I will do what I can to be a speaker. That's like a healthier version of shame. Not to also like conflict with you, but I just can't uh, I have to,
Yeah,
give
I
you a little
appreciate
bit
it.
of
I
that.
appreciate it support. Thank you.
So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and his first language is French. I know he probably searching words as well. Like as he speaks. I
I mean,
understand
most
being
of my
type of.
my vocabulary is at this point. Obviously, there's always improvement for anyone, even native English speaker for that matter. It's like
yeah,
just how damn repetitive the average the average person is now. Like we hear like the 1,000 time crash out, landing my plane, all that. It's everyone you almost uses the same term at this point. But point being, no, I mean, yeah, I don't search my word, but obviously it's just like my brain works that way. That there's a not saying I'm a genius. It's just it's very noisy up there in my thick skull. Like the noise is very rarely interrupted. So I guess I just speak the same. It's just uninterrupted noise that comes out of my fucking pile, and that's how it works. So it's not an excuse by any means, but that's just how it is. I'm very sorry for being the way I am, but yeah, that's life, man. The life of a pseudo schizo.
yeah. So I would ultimately say the prescription here is every combination of, don't rush this, and that's easy. That's just like platitude. That's like a platitude, but on a serious note, don't rush this. We feel compelled to rush this and rush into a relationship by every means of we feel like we'll lose the one opportunity we have. which is really just symptomatic of believing that you won't have opportunities because you believe that you're not likable or affable enough or sexy enough or something. You know, people rush into relationships because of that irrationality of the emotions associated, and they'll rush in because it's a super high spike because that relationship emulates their relationship to their opposite sex. And you know, in some cases it's just out of this, I don't want to say desperation, but it's just out of this, oh well, you know, why not, because I'm getting laid or whatever. So all that's to say, don't rush this in terms of if you feel compelled to go into a relationship or go into a marriage because more so out of fear than out of a desire, then you're ultimately going to end up not happy. You're going to end up resentful. You're going to feel like you were pressured into something. And you know, and if you also feel this like burning passion that's a little bit more of like the gay term is like trauma bond. I'll just say that if it is giving you extreme highs and extreme lows, you know, you might feel compelled to get into this relationship anyway and commit to this person and have this idea that, well, it's going to ameliorate in the end. We could try things, we could try it. And in actuality, you could go to a therapist, you know, like Marchese methods. But, you know, if your foundation is this extreme highs and extreme lows, it's ultimately going to be the chaotic, toxic relationship. So the answer is, step one is not even just to vet people, but to unfuck yourself. So if you have any, and you don't even have to be honest with anybody else, but just be honest with yourself. What is it that I'm actively trying to get here? Am I trying to get laid? Why do I want to get laid? Is it because I'm a Coomer? Is it because I still feel like I'm not man enough unless I have multifaceted sex or multifaceted female approval? You know, in women's case, why am I going after this? You know, in terms of like a security thing, in terms of an approval thing in their way. And so all that's to say that if you investigate yourself and your own feelings and why you want this, and if the answer isn't like an authentic relationship in which you don't even think twice about what you do and you say, you just get along in the same way that you get along with your friends, you know, so unfuck yourself. And then step two is to vet them. And vetting them gets easy when you unfuck yourself, because if you unfuck yourself, it's very easy to say when somebody else has fucked themselves. So, and this is the prescription about like hoes in bars and clubs, sticking their tits and ass out, living in their like insufferable, gay, little chaotic world. Like, it's just very evident. You could feel it. You could analyze it, and you could say, well, you know, they're playing this game and they feel the need to go do X, Y, Z. You can analyze it too. It's healthy and good to do that. But it'll be very clear to you when you come across somebody who has similarly unfucked themselves. And then you establish whether or not you're compatible. So, War Turn, you go ahead.
Yeah, when children they go through puberty, their brain, the normal status becomes coon brain, and it becomes even worse when the media pushes for like promiscuity, you know, in the media, you know, it's the norm these days. And biggest problem is they never get a chance to think about what they want because, well, they start off as a candy cap because, I mean, you just have to think about it. Like when you were a little kid and, you went through puberty and how coon brain you were, you don't even get to think about it because it's like the only thing in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. If you're like, especially with like the porn stuff, and you know, we already talked about that, but especially with the porn stuff, if you're exposed to that, and this isn't to avoid accountability, but if you're exposed to that at that age, you just don't know, you don't like, you haven't gone on Twitter Spaces to have a deep analysis of what that problem is and everything yet, right? So it would just follow that all you know is, well, it's nice and it feels good, so I'm going to um, do it. So yeah, that. You know, and this is tough. Like this is the eternal problem, I already said, of the world, of people, and it's tough. It's not easy, but you have nothing really better to do than to like figure this out. You know, I mean, you have like your epic success, bro, you know, go to the gym and all of that. but you have nothing better to do than to like solve this and whatever that looks like for you. And so, but this sort of panickedness to it, this sort of anxiety around it, like you're gonna be okay in terms of like you want this in the end, but this idea that you need it to for your entire existence is where most people falter. Are kind of operating from this fucked up start where they have to unfuck themselves. I had another thought, but I forgot it here, so I'll let somebody else speak for a moment if anybody has any thoughts. Gibson, you go ahead.
Yeah, I hope there's no more echo. I switched to earphones, but it's really important that people pick partners. I hate that word; it triggers me, but it's relevant. Who can They also have a really good set of boots in case you have to walk through some mud. My dad gave me some good advice saying, hey, I've had a difficult life, not necessarily because of anything bad, but because I have a big appetite for risk. And so when you have a big appetite for risk, you win big and you lose big. Um, so things get hard. Happiness, is very accidental. It's very fleeting. Satisfaction is a lot more lasting. So when we look at partners, 99% of us are only thinking about the good feelings, how magical it is, what could go well. And we're typically not really thinking like, hey, right out of the gate, should I be examining whether or not this person knows how to handle tough times? No, we're like, fuck, they have pretty hair. But it's a lot more important to look at how people handle conflict uh, to make successful relationships long term. And I think satisfaction is highly underrated. It's a lot more lasting long term, like I said, and it's a lot more achievable than happiness. Not many of us get our dream job or our dream girl, but we get things that satisfy us, and that ends up being what keeps us whole. And I also want to just kind of a tangent, the satisfaction being very important. That was something that was taught to me by my life coach. I think it's very valuable to work with coaches. Um, I had sought therapy for various reasons as a younger man and thought, wow, this is so cheesy. And as an adult, kind of got stuck at some point. Um, I'm a parent, right? So I had a young child and I just felt like my life wasn't moving forward. So I got with a local guy that I really respected, somebody that I looked up to, and I sought some coaching. And the name of the game was, we all steer the ship off course sometimes, but getting the ship back on course, faster or in better, more efficient ways to sail in the direction you want to be sailing is really important. So that's kind of all I got. I'm not married, but I'm a parent, so I do know what it takes to, take care of somebody all the way, to keep somebody alive. But I don't really know what it means to, have a partnership or a marriage.
Absolutely. Well said. Wartorn, you go ahead.
Yeah, media pushes you to find the perfect partner, perfect. A lot of people can't achieve it. It's unattainable. And the problem with actually finding somebody, or most people don't actually find them. But if you do find them, then you are the one that becomes the burden. I would say the smartest thing to do would be to find somebody that compliments you, like not like compliment, like saying nice things, but like that evens out your own weaknesses.
Yeah, well said. What Gibson was just saying, or are you still okay? What Gibson was just saying reminded me. People conflate happiness with not just pleasure, but also happiness with like this drug-like euphoria all the way up. Happiness is peace in truth. Just think about what it would be like to be at peace. Like you're not preoccupied with whatever things that hurt you or whatever things that, this sort of endless pursuit. Happiness is peace. And that's something to think about too. That doesn't mean go like chud monk, guru mode, but there's a depth to peace regarding this. And, if you've ever sort of gone through like a growth journey, you can understand that in that, I don't know, let's say you were trying to bang girls to feel better about yourself, and then you uh, came to and had some sort of revelation. The uh, other side of that, the crossover of that, of just never thinking twice about that ever again, that's happiness, or that is one step closer to happiness. And so it follows that, Marchese methods here is eyes on the prize, wherein it's as simple as, if it's not working right now, if something's not sticking and all of that, the ultimate responsibility onto you is to find a way to make it work and to endlessly find it. And to Gibson's point, sometimes you're going to get it wrong. There's nothing you lose out on that. You might feel and think that you lose out on time or life force or money or whatever, but you had to try something. And, in theory, could you make the correct decision every single second of every single day? Sure, in theory, that would be ideal, but accepting whether or not, or accepting that that's not the case, is also a correct decision. And so it would just follow to be at peace with the nature of life and the nature of doing what you got to do to get what you want. I keep talking because I had something I thought of earlier that I'm trying to arrive back at. I should have written.
You're gonna think of it later when you're taking a
Yeah,
shit.
something like that. So, all right, it sounds like we're closing in on our ending here. So I'll say to the floor, was there anything else you wanted to bring up? Any burning points, thoughts, even if it was from a very early part of the conversation? I guess that's a no. Alrighty, so I'll do these I think my plan here is to do a space every Saturday. I got to come up with a topic usually, but I also come up with ones as I think of them, like this one, because I was arguing with a bunch of retards yesterday. So be on the lookout for these.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah,
was
be
really
on the
funny.
lookout for these. Yeah, dude, like, that guy too, and he's like, I could tell your
What
wife.
was the premise of the arguments?
These
What
guys were
was the
like,
premise of the argument?
Oh, I
go ahead,
thought,
Gibson.
well, one guy really didn't like me, which is cool. Like that, I understand. One was kind of racially spicy. Like a guy was like, well, in Africa, like there's these guys that just have like a million wives, and like that's what you guys need
Oh,
to
I'm talking
do.
about I'm talking about
And
yesterday.
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, sorry. I was talking about yesterday. That was funny though. But I was just talking about yesterday. These two guys. Let me see if I could pull it up a little bit more here, just so that I remember it accurate. You know that Jay pickup guy. He was saying his meme was, "Oh, sex will be boring for 40 to 50 years. With the same woman, and she's gonna get fat." So just my basic premise is like, what makes you so sure she will get fat, and 40 to 50 year, like, what's so boring about that? And then these two guys just like lost their mind at me.
It's
So
kind
that
of
was
a
fun.
shallow premise to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought it would be a good idea to compare marriage versus promiscuity here. So you guys are all based in 5,000 IQ. I appreciate, we get a lot of people in here now. I think some of you guys that I have as speakers bring a lot of people in, so much appreciated. I host these. I definitely do one every Saturday. Probably do an additional one once a week. These are really good. And
Yeah,
uh,
I'll be moderating a debate tomorrow with Marte. I don't know if you've met him yet, but
yes.
or yeah, cool. Yeah, so I don't know if you were at the last debate that I moderated with him and Blend, but I have one tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern. He'll be debating Georgia, who comes to our spaces. She's like a teacher. She teaches like she's a I don't know lecturer. She does statistical analysis, but debate. I put it in the nest nonetheless, so you can kind of read. But
Okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll do. I host these every Saturday. I'll probably do an additional one once a week, probably on Mondays, because it's Marchese Maxing Mondays. So that'll be the rhythm here. And, my website is marchesemethods.com. If any of you want therapy or coaching and all that, not to shill too hard. I know you'll get accused of being a hecking gwifto, so I'll just put that there in case anybody didn't notice. And, anyone else? Final thoughts?
I was just going to say it was a great space. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to have good to have a girl in the boys' treehouse every once in a while.
Yeah, thanks for staying up late for us.
Yeah, fuck yeah, British lady.
Yeah, W, yeah.
Nice chat.
Christ is Lord. Everybody should get married. I think it's not a rant, but anybody saying they don't want to get married for any reason is a cope. You need to get married. You need to have kids. It's in the Bible. Okay, that's the right thing
Nice.
to do. Christ is Lord.
Based and true. Alrighty, so I'll end that there. Thanks for coming, everybody, and we'll see you on the timeline throughout the evening, probably.
Nice chatting, y'all. You guys have a good day.
Alrighty, you too.